I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more fierce. The thing that bothers a teacher more than anything is to watch a bully, to watch this bully and to stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them and you tell them why bullying's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back.
Breaking news just dropped and jaws are hitting the floor everywhere. Tim Walz stood at a podium, dressed like someone assembled his outfit using instructions written in a foreign language and delivered what might be the most contradictory speech in modern political history. And once Tyrus starts pulling apart the threads of this disaster, there is absolutely no way to look away. Grab your popcorn because this is about to get wild. The setup is almost too perfect. Walz, the Minnesota governor, who somehow became a vice presidential candidate, shows up at a conference as the keynote speaker. The keynote, the main event. And what does he deliver? A rambling, confused mess about bullying that manages to contradict itself within the same breath. He talks about fierce resistance while sounding like he rehearses empathy in the mirror every morning. He condemns bullying while literally saying he wants to bully someone back. The cognitive dissonance is so thick you could cut it with a knife.
That was absolutely painful. He was the keynote speaker at this conference. Can you imagine having to watch more of that? Yeah.
And here is where it gets interesting. The panel does not just sit there nodding politely. They tear into this performance like a pack of wolves who just spotted the weakest member of the herd. The comparisons start flying immediately, and they are brutal. Having Tim Walz as your keynote speaker is apparently like opening a mall where the big anchor store at the end is a Kohl's. Not Nordstrom, not Saks. Kohl's. The department store equivalent of showing up to a black tie event in cargo shorts. But the visual observations cut even deeper. Every time Walz tries to dress nicely, he looks like when you dress a baby up for a wedding. That image lands perfectly because you can see it immediately. The ill-fitting suit, the awkward posture, the expression of someone who is not quite sure why they are there or what they are supposed to be doing. It is the political equivalent of watching someone try to assemble IKEA furniture without the manual while insisting they have it all figured out.
Let's bully him, right? He kind of goes back and forth. I don't think bullying is funny, or I think it's bad. I was bullied. I was bullied quite a bit. You probably could have guessed that.
Yeah.
I was bullied. I was bullied almost up until high school, and I was homeschooled.
The self-deprecating humor from the panel cuts through the tension, but it also highlights something crucial. Even people who were actually bullied can see through Walz's transparent attempt to weaponize victimhood. This is not about standing up to actual bullying. This is about finding a socially acceptable excuse to attack political opponents while claiming moral high ground. It is political shape-shifting like a mood ring, changing colors based on whatever seems advantageous in the moment. Then Tyrus enters the conversation, and the temperature in the room immediately shifts. This is not going to be gentle ribbing. This is going to be a demolition.
First of all, whose balls is he hiding in his cheeks? That's the first question that I want to know. And I don't love the way he says, fierce.
Yeah.
The observation is crude but devastatingly effective. Because once it is said, you cannot unhear it, you cannot unsee it. Every time Walz says fierce with that particular emphasis, it sounds less like strength and more like someone trying desperately to convince themselves they are something they are not. The mockery continues with Tyrus doing a pitch-perfect imitation of what Walz probably sounds like in his own head.
We've got to be fierce. We fiercely have to go up to President Trump and spank him. We gotta bully him. I gotta get my hands on him. I'm gonna Greco-Roman him to the ground.
The imagery is intentionally uncomfortable because it exposes the weird undertone of Walz's entire presentation. This does not sound like political opposition. It sounds like personal obsession. It sounds like someone who has spent way too much time thinking about physical confrontation with their perceived enemy. And that is when Tyrus drops the bomb that changes everything.
A teacher, the worst thing for a teacher to do is watch a bully? So you're a teacher in the playground and you're just watching the bully? You're the creep.
Yeah.
A teacher snatches the bully's ass up. Yeah. Come sit with me. That's what I know. Someone's bullying. Oh, you can sit with me for a while. And then I would lean on him.
Let that sink in for a moment. Walz, a former teacher, says the worst thing for a teacher is to watch a bully. Not to intervene, not to stop it, to watch it. What kind of teacher just stands there watching bullying happen? That is not a teacher. That is a spectator. That is someone who let things happen and then later pretended they were powerless to stop it. Tyrus immediately recognizes this for what it is. A massive tell about who Walz really is underneath the folksy exterior. A real teacher does not watch bullying like it is entertainment. A real teacher steps in immediately. They pull the bully aside. They create consequences. They protect the vulnerable. But Walz frames it as watching, which reveals everything about his actual approach to leadership. He watches things happen. He observes. He waits to see which way the wind is blowing before deciding how to respond. It is the leadership style of someone holding a garden hose at a 5-alarm fire, going through the motions while everything burns down around them.
He's not a teacher. He's not a politician. He's a creepy guy who can't remember his speeches. I don't know what the hell was in the water in that White House, or was everyone on the same bad cocaine? But Kamala can't speak. He can't speak. Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time.
The indictment expands beyond just Walz. This is about a systemic failure of competence, an entire administration where nobody can string together coherent thoughts, where the vice president talks in word salads, where the president forgets where he is, where the vice presidential candidate contradicts himself mid-sentence while claiming to be fierce. It is not just incompetence. It is incompetence stacked on incompetence until it becomes almost impressive in its consistency.
And I said this in the 5. He's a clown without a circus. He's
Doesn't
just
even need
roaming,
makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for? I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months from now.
Yes.
The metaphor is perfect. A clown without a circus. Someone dressed for a performance that already ended, wandering around looking for any stage that will have him, any audience that will pay attention. And the prediction is brutal but probably accurate. 3 months from now, when someone asks who ran as vice president in 2024, people will struggle to remember, not because it was so long ago, but because he made so little impression. Because competence leaves a mark, and incompetence just leaves a void.
Like, he is such a limp weenus.
Sometimes the simplest descriptions hit hardest. No elaborate metaphor needed. No complex political analysis required. Just a straightforward assessment of someone who lacks any real backbone, any genuine conviction, any actual strength beneath the manufactured tough guy routine. The conspiracy theory emerges naturally from the absurdity. Is he actually a plant? Did Republicans somehow convince Democrats to pick the one person guaranteed to alienate male voters? Because if you wanted to design a candidate specifically to turn off men, you could not do better than Walz.
He's got to be a Republican.
Right.
Because it's like his mannerisms, his lack of ideas, his just odd comportment, the fact that he hasn't seen his scrotum in a decade and a half, all of it makes it seem that he is single-handedly just trying to turf the Democrat Party.
The analysis cuts deeper, though. Democrats have a massive problem with men. Hispanic men voted for Trump for the first time ever. Young men overwhelmingly voted for Trump for the first time ever. The party knows it has a crisis. And their solution? Send out Tim Walz, a man who makes weakness look aspirational, who talks about being fierce while embodying the opposite, who has as much use as a flammable tea cozy.
And this is the guy they set out there. You know, he's got as much use as a flammable tea cozy.
Yeah. No, it does. It seems like a skit, right?
And here is the thing about bad skits. Eventually, someone has to acknowledge they are watching a bad skit. Eventually, the audience stops pretending this is serious political discourse and starts recognizing it for what it really is. Performance art by someone who forgot their lines, lost their props, and is just making it up as they go along while hoping nobody notices.
The idea that he could bully Trump, we've got news for you, okay? In that showdown, you end up in the locker, Tim Walz, okay? And Trump is the jock who takes off with the cheerleaders, okay? You will not be the bully.
The high school metaphor works because everyone understands the dynamics immediately. This is not a fair fight. This never was a fair fight. Walz talking about bullying Trump is like a chihuahua barking at a Rottweiler and expecting to be taken seriously. The size difference is too obvious. The power imbalance too clear, and everybody watching knows exactly how this ends. But looking at the political trends reveals something even more damning.
The Democrats have a massive problem with men. Hispanic men voted for Trump, first time ever. Young men overwhelmingly voted for Trump, first time ever. And they realize they have a problem, but they have no idea how to address it. And if their answer is sending out Tim Walz, I mean, who's going to be his sidekick for this? Andy Dick?
The party understands the diagnosis, but completely misunderstands the treatment. You cannot solve a masculinity problem by sending out the least masculine messenger imaginable. You cannot win back men by having someone who embodies every negative stereotype about weak liberal politicians lecture them about being fierce. The disconnect is so massive it borders on parody. And the descent continues. Biden was picked by Obama. Kamala was picked by Biden. Walz was picked by Kamala. Each selection somehow worse than the last. Each choice representing a further decline in basic competence and capability. By the time you get to Walz, you are scraping the absolute bottom of the barrel and finding it somehow goes even deeper.
Like a jar of sweet pickles.
The imagery is absurd, but it captures the trajectory perfectly. This is not a bench of serious candidates. This is a grocery store shelf of random items being grabbed in desperation. And somehow the sweet pickles still might be more appealing than whatever comes next. Tyrus brings it back to reality, with a crucial point about actual leadership, about what real men and masculine leaders actually do.
If he wants to see what real men, what masculine leaders do, he should look at the cops, okay, that he constantly derides,
right,
who had to save his biggest city, Minneapolis and St. Paul, during the riots because of what he unleashed, okay? Those were mostly young men with badges and guns and guts, right, who went out and did what men do, which is protect the weak.
Yeah.
If he wants an example, he should look at those people that he has disparaged for years.
This is the kill shot, because it is not just criticism, it is holding up a mirror. Walz wants to talk about strength and courage, while the people who actually demonstrated those qualities, the cops who risked their lives to save his cities from the chaos he enabled, are the same people he demonizes. The hypocrisy is not subtle. It is not hidden. It is right there on the surface, impossible to miss. Real masculine leadership is not talking tough in a speech. It is putting your body on the line. It is running toward danger while others run away. It is protecting people even when it is unpopular, even when politicians like Walz will vilify you for it afterward. Those cops displayed more real courage in one shift than Walz has shown in his entire political career.
If he hadn't been picked. And he was a governor. I mean, just think about this. He's a governor. Yeah. I never heard of him.
Not just any governor, Greg. He's a fierce guy.
Yes.
The sarcasm drips heavy because the observation is devastating. Walz was a sitting governor of a major state and remained completely invisible until he got picked as a running mate. That level of irrelevance takes effort. That level of failing to make any impression whatsoever while holding significant political power is almost impressive. He governed Minnesota, and somehow nobody outside Minnesota knew or cared. He left no mark, made no waves, generated zero national interest or attention. And now, thrust onto the national stage through no merit of his own, he demonstrates exactly why he deserved that obscurity. Every speech reinforces it. Every public appearance confirms it. Every attempt to project strength reveals deeper weakness underneath. The final prediction lands with perfect comedic timing.
I can't wait to find out in a year what his stage name will be.
Dolores.
Yes. Now, it has something to do with Waltz.
It is a joke, but it also contains a kernel of truth. Because this is how political careers end in the modern era. You do not fade away with dignity. You become a punchline. You become a trivia answer that nobody remembers. You become the subject of bar bets about who was the worst vice presidential candidate in modern history. And if you are lucky, really lucky, maybe you get a brief second act doing something completely divorced from politics where people vaguely recognize your face but cannot quite place where they know you from. The comprehensive destruction is complete. Tyrus did not just criticize Walz. He pulled apart every thread of the man's public persona until nothing remained but contradictions, wrapped in incompetence, wrapped in a suit that does not fit. The teacher who watches bullies, the fierce warrior who cannot intimidate a house cat, the masculine voice for men who makes every actual man in America cringe, the political leader who governed in complete obscurity until someone made the catastrophic decision to give him a national platform. And here is what makes this entire takedown so effective. It is not based on ideology. It is not partisan attacks on policy positions. It is pure observation of someone who is fundamentally not equipped for the role they are trying to play. You can disagree with someone's politics and still respect their competence, their intelligence, their ability to articulate a vision. But when someone cannot even maintain consistency within their own speech, when they contradict themselves while trying to sound tough, when they embody the opposite of every quality they claim to represent, there is nothing left to respect. Walz talks about bullying Trump while looking like he would lose a fight with a strong breeze. He lectures about teacher responsibilities while admitting teachers should watch bullies. He projects fierce energy while generating all the intimidation factor of a substitute teacher on their first day. The gap between what he thinks he is projecting and what he actually projects is so vast you could drive a convoy of trucks through it. And the Democrats, facing their worst crisis with male voters in modern history, looked at this man and said, yes, this is our answer. This is how we connect with men. Send out the guy who makes everyone uncomfortable when he talks about getting physical with Trump. Send out the governor nobody heard of who ran Minneapolis into the ground during riots. Send out the walking contradiction who wants to bully the bullies while condemning bullying. The strategic incompetence is staggering. The lack of self-awareness is profound. And Tyrus, sitting at that panel, simply held up the mirror and let America see exactly what Democrats chose to represent them. No spin needed. No elaborate arguments required. Just point at Walz, let him speak, and watch the entire facade crumble in real time. By the time this segment ends, there is nothing left of Tim Walz's carefully constructed image. The fierce warrior is revealed as a contradiction machine. The teacher is exposed as someone who watches rather than acts. The masculine voice for men is shown to be exactly the opposite. And the vice presidential candidate is recognized as a footnote who will be forgotten faster than any losing candidate in modern history. That is when you realize the real damage. Because once someone like Tyrus starts pulling back the curtain on political theater, once they demonstrate how easy it is to dismantle manufactured personas simply by pointing out obvious contradictions, you cannot look away. You cannot unsee it. Every future appearance by Walz will be viewed through this lens. Every attempt to sound tough will echo with the memory of these observations. Every speech will be measured against this comprehensive breakdown. The panel did not just mock a bad speech. They performed a political autopsy on a career that was never really alive to begin with. And somewhere, Tim Walz is still out there, still trying to sound fierce, still contradicting himself, still wondering why nobody takes him seriously. The answer is playing on loop, dissected by Tyrus, visible to anyone willing to actually look at what they are seeing rather than what they are told they should see. And that is the real lesson here. Political theater only works when the audience agrees to suspend disbelief. Once someone refuses to play along, once they simply describe what is actually happening without the protective coating of partisan spin, the entire illusion collapses. Walz needed people to hear fierce and imagine strength. Instead, they heard it and imagined exactly what Tyrus described. Someone desperately trying to convince everyone, including themselves, that they are something they clearly are not. The emperor has no clothes. And worse, the emperor is wearing a suit that does not fit while talking about bullying bullies and watching children get bullied and being fierce about spanking Trump. At some point, the sheer absurdity becomes impossible to ignore. That point was this panel discussion. That point was Tyrus refusing to pretend this makes sense. That point was when America collectively realized they were watching a clown without a circus perform for an audience that stopped laughing hours ago.